Hey, everybody, welcome back. I am so excited to have Dr. Jessica Bryan here with us today, joining us from Canada, our neighbors up north. Dr. Jessica Bryan is a psychologist and senior clinician scientist. First that I've heard that. Congrats to you. At Holland Bloorview Kids Rehab Hospital, and she's also an associate professor at the University of Toronto. And I got to meet Dr. Jessica Bryan last year through the NDBI Connections Conference, where she gave a very inspiring and informative talk about social ABCs, which falls under this NDBI umbrella. So, Jessica, thank you for coming. Thank you for being here.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
I love it. Can you tell everyone a little bit about your journey into NDBI? Like, how did we get there? Where did you start? What have you been up to over the past X amount of years that you've been doing this?
It has been a lot of years, so we don't have to put a
Go
number
too far.
to it. I appreciate that. I was reflecting back, and honestly, my first kind of awareness of NDBIs came through while I was in grad school a long time ago. So we're talking, a different century. So the late 1990s.
Me too.
We were I was really starting to sort of hear about pivotal response training or treatment, and PRT really sort of caught my attention because I was very interested in working with kids with autism. I wanted to think about sort of ways to support these kids that felt comfortable and natural. I just sort of around that same time, I went to do my internship for my sort of as part of my doctoral work, and I ended up going to a place as a center essentially in the States. So I was in New Jersey at PCDI. I don't know if
I have heard, yes, incredible.
So I got a lot of sort of really good grounding in kind of the fundamentals of the science of learning from PCDI. And then I was just really interested in exploring the idea of these more naturalistic approaches, particularly for the little ones. That's really kind of where it started for me. And I remember going to my supervisor with the sort of hand-printed manual from the Caregivers lab, and saying, I really like this approach. It feels like a nice fit for these little kids that we're interested in. And then I sort of started early 2000, well, around 2007, started working on developing an intervention. So that's where the social ABCs really started to take hold. It's interesting looking back because they always talk about this 17-year span between developing something and kind of getting it out into the world. And it kind of has been about that long.
Oh, wow.
So it's been a journey. But really the social ABCs is grounded in PRT, which is one of the NDBI models. And I don't want to, I'll let you ask some specific questions, but essentially, I've been working on that with my team since 2007. We've done various revisions and iterations, and we've gotten a lot of feedback from the community, and it's helped us grow. And sort of that's how it all got started for us.
I love that. I love it. I was looking at the website, and your talk was, again, informative and inspiring. Those are the two I words that come to mind, because it was just something I had never had on my radar before. And I am so excited to get you on here and to share this for people to learn more about the social ABCs and to get to know you and your colleagues and research, and to really open up those doors to other potential avenues to supporting parents or caregivers, what you guys do in the model. And I know there's some differences in the US and Canada with early intervention, but it still tracks in terms of supporting caregivers. So really thinking about how do we best do that? And can we do that within the NDBI lens and having that? So that might be helpful to talk about what social ABCs might look like, or some of the characteristics, or the parent kind of component and supporting them. What does it look like in practice? Might be a good place to start.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So it's very, we fit into, there are all these acronyms, right? So we sort of think about ourselves as a naturalistic developmental intervention and NDDI. We also, another acronym that we often use is CMI, or caregiver mediated intervention. So the social ABCs it really is designed to, it's caregiver mediated. So everything that we teach directly to the primary family caregiver. So mom or dad, sometimes grandma, sometimes aunt or uncle, whoever's really sort of the primary person in that toddler's life. We do mostly work with toddlers, and it's really designed thinking about that toddler age range. And we work on, so we teach the parents skills that they can use then in their kind of day-to-day natural interactions with their toddler to enhance their sort of social development. And we really, what we've focused on a lot is keeping the sort of learning objectives quite narrow, so that we're not asking parents to learn many different things. We're really focusing on things that we think of as being pivotal. And again, that sort of speaks back to the PRT lens that we come from, but really working on core developmental goals that will have kind of wider impacts for the kids. So those goals for us are, so the social ABCs are things like orienting your attention to the person that you're interacting with.
Huge.
And that, in fact, all of our goals, our learning goals, came out of research that we had done that showed these specific things to be more challenging for babies as they sort of as their autism was emerging. And I can talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
But essentially, we're working on kind of orienting to the person that you're interacting with.
Yeah.
We're working on sharing enjoyment. So finding activities that parents and children will enjoy doing together.
Yeah.
And really a lot of that involves working through from the child's motivation. So helping parents notice, what is it that motivates your child? What is it in the moment that motivates your child, and why? Like, is it the sound? Is it the color? Is it the feel of something? Like, what is it? And then helping parents sort of build routines through their child's motivation. And then the last sort of specific target or goal is helping kids kind of learn to direct their communication to their whoever they're interacting with.
I love that. And I can speak as a parent of a neurodivergent kiddo, and we had EI come into the house and do this, and you're going to work on this. And there wasn't a lot of parent caregiver input, and they'd leave and we'd laugh and laugh, like, we're not going to do that. So the ability to push into a routine for a busy, already overwhelmed parent is just, I don't have 15 minutes to sit down and play. Like, in that context, where it says, let's make it meaningful for both this child and myself, and build it into a routine and kind of back out of that and get the learning that, so much more helpful. And I really appreciate you saying those pivotal things that are going to have that most impact, right? Parents can be overwhelmed with learning a bunch of different things. What might be the most important, pivotal, triaged? Just let me start here and get that ripple effect, and then get some momentum, get some excitement, reinforcement, and then teach me another thing and teach me another one. And I love that about the model, because it is overwhelming to be a parent. Just a parent.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of this came out of work that my team and I have been doing with younger baby siblings of children who have autism. So with my colleagues across Canada, we were working, again, starting in the very late 1990s. We were working with families who had a child with autism, and then they had a subsequent baby, and we were following those babies starting at 6 months of age to sort of see what are some of the earlier signs. We knew that some of those babies would go on to have autism, and so what might be some of those early indicators, and that really informed the things that we identified as learning priorities, and also gave us a lot of insight, I think, into kind of, just like you were saying, sort of that idea that families have a lot going on, and we cannot expect it's just not fair to sort of expect a family to learn a million different things. We get really, really high fidelity sort of outcomes from families. So families learn the intervention really well. They feel, they tell us that they feel empowered. Like, I've learned this thing and I feel like it's making a difference, which is incredible. And they feel self-efficacious. So they tell us, I'm feeling empowered and I feel like I know what I'm doing. And then of course we look at and measure sort of child developmental gains as well. But hearing that from the parents about sort of that impact that they now have with their little one, and feeling like, I mean, we hear from parents who say, I wasn't really sure how to play with him before, and now, you know, he wants to play with me now, and now I am the person that he comes to when he wants to interact, and just really really important sort of new connections that are being made between the parent and the child, which are really important to us.
Absolutely. I think sometimes providers forget that for parents, life keeps lifing. Like, I hear what you want me to do. Got a lot going on right now, and you're an expert and you know this. I'm learning this again, new skill, new context. Being able to step back and really support parents and caregivers in a way that is going to validate them and empower them and help them feel connected to their child is so impactful. And then on the flip side of that, I feel more confident. I feel like I'm having more fun. I feel really like in a great relationship with my kiddo where they might not have been there. Perhaps that stress and anxiety and overwhelm is kind of also diminishing a little bit, right? And that's an extra added benefit to really supporting caregivers. So, and then am I right? Is there a group, individual and a group?
Yeah, so I think I got a little bit off topic there, but you were asking kind of what does it look like? So essentially there are a couple of different models. So there's a model where that takes place over 12 weeks and it's fully one-to-one. So in that model, so we sort of have two main components. One is just learning some information, and we have a manual and the coach goes over the contents of the manual with the parents. But then we really put a lot of emphasis on the in the moment coaching. So there's moment by moment coaching where you are playing with your child. As a parent, you're playing with your child, and the coach is kind of just coaching you through those moments. Like, oh, I notice he's looking over at the ball. Why don't you go a little closer to the ball and see if you roll it to him? Like, maybe it looks like he's interested in it. Let's see if he's interested. Those kind of moments. And that makes up the bulk of the program, is the coaching.
12 weeks.
So in the individual model, it's 12 weeks long, and there are sort of several. It actually starts with 3 sessions in the first week. Okay. And then we taper it down to 2 and then down to 1 towards the end, and we skip a week towards the end. So it's really kind of, it fades out. We fade out as the parents take over and become more proficient. And
it's also very intentional, I'm sure, and very helpful to back it out.
Yeah, we intentionally do back out. And remember, we're never interacting directly with the child. So it's all coaching the parents as they interact with their child. And then we have a group model. So we were really excited by our individual model. We were seeing beautiful outcomes for the families and for the kids. But we were also aware that, I mean, you know, there are resource constraints everywhere, right? And in Canada, we have an amazing healthcare system, but it's public healthcare, and so there are, you know, resources can be slim. Yeah. So we wanted to find a model that was a little more resource efficient. So we developed this group model where families meet together kind of in small groups and learn. So it's actually a hybrid model, to be clear. It's not fully group. So all of the learning exactly. So all of the learning that's like content related takes place as a group. And then there's still one-to-one coaching. And we also pared it down so it's 6 weeks long now.
I was just going to ask, is that also 12 weeks? So it's 6 weeks.
6 weeks. Yeah.
That's exciting. So that one's data research on that one too?
Yeah, so we do. So we had an RCT, a randomized control trial of the individual 12-week model. We've now published a pilot study from the group model with just over 80 families. So it's a big-ish pilot study. Yeah. And it was really, the timing was very strange because we started the project just before COVID.
Oh gosh, of course.
But it ended up sort of working in our favor for the study, anyway, which was that we had, so families were coming into the clinic. So they were coming in, they were meeting as a group in person, and then they were coming into the clinic also for the coaching sessions,
Okay.
which may not have been the best plan, but that was our plan. So
Okay.
we worked with about 40 families that way. And
Okay.
then COVID hit, and my amazing coaches said to me, we can do this virtually. And honestly, I was like, I don't know, guys. This seems like a tall order. But my coaches are incredible. And they were like, I think and the families were really also very game. They were like, let's try it. So, like credit where credit is due. The families and the coaches were both ready to go. So we pivoted really quickly to coaching virtually. So in a situation just like we're on today, we would be on a Zoom call and coaching the families. And the group sessions were still taking place, but over Zoom. So families were still meeting together in small groups, like four to six families. And then all the coaching was taking place virtually. And there's some things that made it possible because of the way we do the social ABC. So the coaches don't directly work with the kids. So we weren't losing that, right? And we don't do any modeling. So all of the learning takes place through coaching.
I love that.
So it really worked well virtually. And just by happenstance, we had about half of our sample, or half our participants got the program in person, and about half of them got it virtually. COVID. So it wasn't randomized, but we have really nice outcomes showing that very, very similar outcomes for families, regardless of whether they receive the program virtually or in person.
Oh,
there was one sort of hint of a difference, which I thought was very cool.
Which is
that for the in-person model, when families were meeting with other families in person, the reduction in stress was a little bit better. So there was something very special about, not surprising, but very special about meeting in person with other families.
Like community sense of not being alone and
exactly.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting to look at, we are looking at it now, but interesting to know whether, so stress was very high in the virtual group, but it was just the beginning of COVID. So
yeah,
it's understandable that stress was high. We're now just finishing another randomized control trial looking at just the virtual group model compared to a control condition. And so we'll have more information fairly soon about how that looks in terms of reduced stress as well for families, as well as child outcomes and all the standard things we've been looking at.
I appreciate so much that it's just parent mediated, not just parent mediated, that it is parent mediated, and that you guys aren't on the floor modeling it. So prior to my NDBI exposure and previous old school ABA days, so NDBI about a decade now, get on the floor, show them how to do it. They can't do it, coach them. And it just, again, now as a parent, I think back to, yeah, that probably wasn't very helpful. They probably felt very discouraged. And so moving into more of a parent mediated approach where I am actively coaching the parent to coach the parent, where I don't want to be that model because I know it might look better with me than them. That's not fair, right? I'm on chapter 30 of my practice journey here. They're just starting out learning how to help support their child. And I also find it to be really incredibly beneficial for my coaching skills. Like I can't get it in model. I can't go through the Zoom, right? I have to think about how to coach in a way that can support that without relying on jumping in and showing. And that has changed how I support parents tremendously because you have to be creative and you have to think about that. So I don't know if you encounter that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely hear that from my coaches that there's nothing that hones your coaching skills like coaching over Zoom. Like that is just the best way to become a really, really skilled coach. And yeah, like certainly that temptation to be like, oh, let me just show you it's just not there anymore, right? And I think you really hit the nail on the head in terms of thinking about why we might have made that decision to not model. And exactly as you say, we felt very strongly after working so closely with families early in their autism journey with their babies.
Yeah.
we were so aware of how
Mindful.
parents are feeling often during that period. And we wanted to do everything in our power to not make them feel like they weren't doing doing as well as they would like to be doing.
Yeah.
So we felt very strongly, as you say, like, it's not fair to have we didn't feel that it was fair to have an expert come in and do the things, and the child's going to love playing with you, and then the parent may not get the same reaction. That didn't feel right. We also feel very strongly that we didn't want parents to watch a therapist and copy that therapist style. We wanted the interaction to be genuine for how you interact with your baby as a parent, and not to be like, I'm acting like the therapist that my child really likes. Like, we really wanted to avoid that as well. So there really were two reasons that we avoid that kind of modeling. And then the other thing is, because of how young these kids are,
they're going to want the parent.
First of all, they'll want the parent, and we want them to want their parents. Really, we want them to want their parents. But also, like, imagine if you're in a session where it's the first time the child reaches out, or the first time they make a sound, or the first time they say mama, and it's to the therapist and not to the parent. Like, that is not, we just did not think that would be okay. So really, there were lots of reasons to do it the way we did it.
Oh, I appreciate that as a mom. I didn't even think about that, but appreciate that. Let the parent have the win. Let them celebrate those first, and you are facilitating it or mediating it, but you're not kind of in the way, then having to try to transfer it back over. And also kind of thinking about that therapist style. Like, if it's not genuine, it won't sustain and maintain over time because it's not you. And then parents stop doing it, it's not working. And then we get into I don't know how to help my child. So I appreciate the intentional thoughtfulness of the model with the coaching that you've done. I don't know a lot of models that have really spelled it out that way, which is incredible to listen to and to really be mindful of the parents, the target population who you're servicing, the parents and the caregivers, grandmas and aunts, to really empower them and to help those connections establish, which is what, again, social orienting, social engagement, social enjoyment, helping to get directed communication, those three things. I wanted to circle back. You had said something about those early indicator behaviors from the little ones. Can you list a couple of those, if you can think of the top of your head, that kind of influenced where social ABC's targets are coming from? So the little ones, you had talked about those early concerns or early indicators.
Yeah. So this was work. This was led by some of my colleagues in Canada. So Susan Bryson, Lonnie Zwagenbaum, they might be names that you know. And really, we were looking, as I said, we were working with babies who had an older sibling with autism. So we knew that they might also end up with, with the diagnosis themselves, or with similar kinds of profiles. And what we found in that research essentially was a couple of interesting things. So one is that around 12 months of age, you can see differences in the babies who go on to have autism, to be diagnosed with autism. You see differences in their sort of visual attention skills. So their ability to kind of orient, move their attention in space from one thing to another, shift their attention, remove their attention or disengage their attention from something in order to look somewhere else. So attention was a really big one. And the kids who ended up at age 3 with a diagnosis were having more difficulty with that attention when they were 12 months old. We also saw differences in smiling. So the kids who ended up getting a diagnosis at 3 were less smiley than the other kids. So we felt there was something, so that's where that sort of shared enjoyment came from. And then, it's not surprising sort of difficulties with social communication or directing communication to a partner. That would be probably a familiar one for lots of people. But really, those were the 3 things we saw as like when we were working directly with the children, with the babies, and we had developed a measure called the AOC, which lots of research sites are still using.
Yes.
That was like a direct assessment to look for those signs. interestingly, when we were working, say, clinically with the babies, looking for those signs, the most informative age was around 12 months for us. The
Okay.
earliest most informative age was around 12 months. But when we asked parents,
Yeah.
if you are concerned, their reports were even earlier, were good predictors of kids who ended up with a diagnosis.
6 months.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
not surprising, right? So
Mm.
around 9 months, parents were very good at sort of detecting those things that ended up leading to predicting that a
Yeah.
child would have a diagnosis.
Yeah, and I feel like that tracks like with Liam's journey, little baby blob, right? Looking sensory social routines, looking, playing, people play. As soon as those kind of objects came into play and he could army crawl and start clutching things and never seemed to let them go and had real hard time shifting back to our little games that we used to play. It's around 6 months that I was like, oh, some of this stuff looks real familiar from what I do for a living. And then by 9 months, absolutely certain 11 months started the evaluative process of, hey, this is pretty much tracking with what I see. Just very blessed to do this for so long, to kind of watch for that on the radar, to really help support parents that have concerns to not get dismissed. That no, there really is
Yes.
a difference between what he used to do, look at me and coo, right? And now he doesn't do it as much. And oh, he's a boy. No, that's a concern that should be validated. And incredible research you have to kind of say that early, to hear parents and just to kind of have it on the radar of getting that support as needed. That's so powerful. And it's so, thinking about all that stuff that's going on from brain development within that time range, and that range of we want to get in there. And sometimes kids get diagnosed at 4 or 5 still in the States. I'm not sure how it is up north. Ooh, that gap is
Yeah.
closing.
And honestly, like the whole, I would say the motivator that really got this whole body work going from our group was that we were hearing from when we were so many of us are also clinicians, right? So I still have clinic 1 day a week. My colleagues are clinicians as well as researchers. So
I love
what
that.
we were hearing from families when we diagnose a kid at age 4, parents were often saying to us, I've been wondering about this for many years.
No.
I started wondering around 1, just like the story you shared. I started wondering around 9 months. I started wondering around 1. My doctor said, he's a boy, let's wait. And of course it's true. Children develop at different age, at different paces, like all of that we need to be thinking about too. But I think
Right.
the bottom line message for us, and in fact, this has now been worked into the Canadian Pediatric Society guidelines. So we have a list of like early signs that community doctors should be thinking about. And one of them that we have in writing in the guidelines is listen to parents. Like if parents have concerns, this is something we need to be thinking about and to be taken seriously.
Yeah, and they might be bringing these types of concerns to you, and this should be on your radar, not maybe what you might not know about autism. And that is really impactful to have that there and a document that they have to look at and they should be reading and implementing and really supporting the families. And it's hard. Boys talk late, like you hear it all. And I just think how many times to the families that I support from around the world, doesn't matter if I'm here, when I lived in England, when I lived in Albania, it's the same story that I hear from caregivers, told to wait, it's okay. And I don't know if it's because they're looking for more really overt kind of autism signs, symptoms versus some of the more subtle things that you can pick up and detect a little bit earlier. Where again, that parent is telling you there's a shift or a difference that they're noticing that's concerning them from a social perspective that they might not even know it's autism. Usually it's like that language delay, but some parents pick up on there's something before that even happens. That engagement, that disengagement, that smiling, right? All that pre-linguistic stuff that could be potentially an avenue to helping a kiddo get a diagnosis, to get the treatment, to get the services that parent can help support them for. I feel like that tracks around the globe. And you guys have some stuff in, is it India, Goa?
Yes, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm looking on the
We
website.
have we trained a group in Goa in southern India.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and
I was
they're
like,
doing
where
the
to
same.
find us? Yeah, or in the States or across Canada. So, what would that look like for practitioners who might be listening? Like, oh my gosh, I want to learn this model. I want to get trained in the model. They just reach out to the Social ABC's website and then go through that process.
Yeah, yeah, we have exactly. So the Social ABC's website is easy to remember. It's socialabcs.ca. It's yeah, and then we do have a sort of a form that people can fill out that gives us a sense of kind of whether your program might be a fit. Obviously, we still need to meet with the program and really
Yeah.
understand, but we want to make sure that you know, you work with toddlers and you have a good sort of understanding of toddler development, and sort of just some of the things that have to be in place are, we just ask you to fill in a
Yeah.
form, and it gives us a sense of where to start, and then someone from my team would get
Okay.
back.
And then what would be
Should
that age range? Sorry, if they were listening, age range for 0 to 2, 1 to 2, 2 to 4, kind of what's that age range for?
Yeah, so it is small, and we're a little bit strict
No.
because we really don't recommend using the program outside of what the research has shown.
Yep.
So the program really is designed for kids starting as young as 12 months
Yeah.
and going up to 42 months.
42. Okay. Got it. Thank you. And that kind of
And
helps.
we actually I have an amazing colleague who's working again with Lonnie Zwagenbaum, who I mentioned earlier, and another colleague, Isabel Smith, who's a psychologist in the Maritimes, working on and so my colleague, her name is Erin Dowds, and she's actually working on developing a baby version of the social ABCs for 6 to 12 months, 6 to 15 months. We're doing a little bit of overlap. We're gonna see which model works best for that 12 to 15 month group. But she's been really working on refining the approach for really, really, really little ones.
I love it. I love it. I feel like you have social ABCs in capital. The baby one should be lowercase ABC. Like here's for the baby
Oh,
version, lowercase.
that's cute. That's actually very cute. We jokingly, I don't know if if this only works with if you know French, but we do sometimes call it the baby C's, like B apostrophe ABCs, but it doesn't
That could work
how
too.
well it translates.
Oh, I
But
love
yeah, we
it.
have to figure out what we'll call it. I like the lowercase
The
letters
lower,
idea.
yeah, it kind of tracks with the baby. That's fantastic. And then you have this incredible foundation to lead up to if they are done with baby, right? Like, oh, feel confident, got what you need, great. If not, they could just morph right into the bigger ABCs and kind of continue the program designed for the 12 to the 42-month old kiddos. And what a nice trajectory to support them. Maybe some parents jump off before then, and some people might still need that ongoing support that just kind of continues through that kid's development. I'm very excited about that because the little ones, again, like you see, like you kind of see the patterns in the siblings, and you just kind of like just be prepared or just get those resources available. It can't hurt, right, to get that there. So if a staff professional community provider wanted to do social ABCs, they would work with you all to get up to speed, training, fidelity certification, if there's a process for that. And then they would be able to then coach the parents one-to-one or have a group format and have resources to guide them on that. Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, so we have been fairly again strict.
Mhm.
We're easygoing people, but we're strict about our social
It's
ABCs.
quality
We've been
control.
we've been strict about sort of what it takes to become a social ABCs coach. So we an individual can become a coach. So far, it's usually through an organization. So you would be a provider within a particular organization. That organization would be backing your interest in becoming a coach. And usually the organization so far has paid for the training.
Mhm.
But yes, then, and there's a fairly rigorous process where we work with the coaches. It's about a 6-month period for the training. And I was going to say, but I'll say, and during that 6 months, you're already working with families who are on your caseload or who are part of your organization. So our trainers will train coaches with the coach's family, like the families that they would be working with anyway.
Mhm.
And then we have lots of sort of video check-ins, and people do have to meet credentials in terms of coaching credentials, and we do then certify people. We do also have a yearly
Like a renewal.
it's not really a recertification, but it's sort of a refresher. Like send us a video where you think you're doing things well, and we'll see that you're still doing things well. And we do kind of make sure that people keep up their skill set. We have some requirements about not kind of taking too much time off between the last video we saw and the next video, because we do think that, as with many things we practice, sort of keeping fresh is really helpful. Obviously, in Canada, we have long maternity leave, so that's okay. People will go away for a year of maternity leave. But when they come back, we just might do a refresher just to sort of make sure they're back up to speed. And we give lots of support. We have a big community of practice. We have about 60 coaches now across Canada, and with some of our partners, we have partners in India and Israel now, and they meet regularly, kind of as a large group to talk about the social ABCs and get support.
I love that. You're going to have a partner in the US. Somebody's going to listen to this and they're going to reach out and they're going to want to do that. And I am fully supportive of that. I've got one in mind. That would
We would
be
love that.
incredible. Cross the border and come down here and to think about the organizations and how to support the parents. And yeah, I am very grateful for a lot of connections that I have, and really thinking about that age range that you guys are supporting, and potentially the babies coming soon, really getting into some nonprofit places I can think of off the top of my head that I think would be 100% on board to do something with this pilot partner research, and to bring that down here. That's incredible that it's in India and Israel. And I'm like, we got some I states, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana. Just keep the eyes going, just bring it down to one of those.
I'll tell you too, like we have sort of different ways in which, so even across Canada, so because the provinces are really where the funding comes for each service agents for the services. So for example, in Ontario, where I am, families can receive the social ABCs once they have a diagnosis. So once they're in the autism system, so they still have to get diagnosed young enough to be eligible. It's working well, but it's, there's a timeline. In a different province, so we have a province called Prince Edward Island, which also has an I in it, PEI.
That's what it was.
And in PEI, what they're doing is they're providing the social ABCs while families are on a waiting list for their autism assessment. And this is like a beautiful model, because we know that many kids won't get their diagnosis early enough to sort of be in that age range, and families are looking for something to do while they're waiting. Our waiting list can be really long in Canada. So it's really a nice way to support families while they're waiting.
Do you think that model of supporting the families on the wait list would uptake in Ontario at some point? That might.
So we are trying. We have a really strong infant development network, and I know you guys too, like 0 to 3 kinds of like services, and we do have some partners already in the infant development sphere, a couple of whom are trained in the social ABCs. So some families are starting to get it that way. We actually just received funding from a granting agency that is going to where we're going to look exactly at that, like, can we bring the social ABCs into sort of more generic infant development spheres, and see if we can get to kids earlier.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
And it also gives us more reach, right? Because a lot of the kids, like if you think of kids who are marginalized or who don't come to the centers to get an assessment as early, this would also, these infant development programs are very good at catching all the kids who have any developmental concerns. So I'm thinking it will help us reach out to kids who might get missed otherwise.
Oh, that's fantastic. And then across the different provinces, because Canada is quite spread out, are there, the coaches can support the families that are in more rural or kind of, like I'm just talking with Regine, thinking again, like some parents might drive 2 hours just to get to the doctor's appointment, depending on where they're at in the provinces. So that kind of coaching remotely sounds like a wonderful resource to be able to get families access to intervention and support where they might not physically be able to even get anything. Is that kind of
exactly true? I mean, we yeah, I mean, that's a big plus of the virtual care. So now our model is, what we're testing right now is completely virtual.
Yeah.
So we could theoretically see families. I mean, Ontario is massive. So if we talk about like Northern Ontario, it's like
How many hours?
hours and hours and hours of driving to get to the north. I think Ontario's, I was just looking this up for a different thing, but Ontario is like the geographic space of Ontario is about 1 million square kilometers.
Wow,
It's
that's big.
massive. It's just massive. So this would be a really nice way to reach families who would otherwise have to drive hours and hours.
Yes, and I think moving everything kind of moving online and kind of digital help support and getting people to get access to things, it's becoming since COVID more and more. I think more and more families are more comfortable with that in terms of support and consultation coaching. So it's great to then think about the families that are more comfortable and more aware and open to that if they have an internet connection and most people have a smartphone of some type that they could get some support in their very remote hours north region or hours west to wherever it is that they're going to get from.
Exactly.
So just access to intervention and then being able to support the families. If people wanted to learn more about social ABCs, we have the website link that we'll put in the show notes. Any other resources that you can think of that would be great? YouTube videos. I'm trying to think like where they could learn more about social ABCs. I'm going to link some
Oh, it's a
articles.
great question. I mean, as we learned before we started recording, our website is in the midst of being updated, and it will be updated soon. So I think that one of the things that we're motivated to do is to put more sort of video resources up there. So right now we have we have our publications, which I know are not always digestible to everybody. Our plan is to create we were going to do some lay summaries, but you're making me think as we talk that maybe lay videos would be a nice approach to just talking about like, what did this study find? What are we looking for? And so I think that's a nice goal for us. We have some funding from our foundation, from a very generous donor here who is supporting some of this like like increasing our digital footprint here. So we will be doing more. Honestly, for now, the place to start is the website.
Social
And
ABC.
even as we create videos and stuff, there will be links to them on the website, or they'll be housed on the website. So that's
Yeah.
the place to go for more information.
I love that. I'm gonna circle back. We had I do some volunteer work for the NDBI Special Interest Group for ABAI here, social media stuff. And one of the things that I've been talking about with Mindy and Brooke Ingersoll and some other big NDBI researchers is how to translate this incredible work that they're doing into TikTok length reels, short video, short picture things on Instagram, carousels, so infographics on Canva created. So if that's something you're interested in, we have a little group of undergrad students that are interested in social media. So we're trying to think about what would a template look like for a study to translate it into the younger generation from not the
Yeah.
1900s to get it in their hands where they can digest it, get interested, and maybe want to learn more. So that's one of the next Q2 missions I have is to how do we take that and get it out there? And I am also from the 1900s, so I'm not a TikToker. I'm not Instagram carousel reel. I don't know what any of that means other than the word. So, but we have a team of students who are really excited to volunteer their time to do that. So perhaps
Amazing.
yeah, so yeah. Oh my God, this has been incredible. I thank you so much for your time, Jessica. This has just been, again, informative, insightful, engaging, and I can't wait for more people to learn about social ABCs. It's amazing.
Jamie, you're amazing. I love your enthusiasm, and I love the opportunity to chat with you, and happy to participate in any way that's helpful.
Thank you so much, and thanks for being here.
You're welcome.